Hello and welcome to this segment of the Good Omens Read-Along. I imagine you've already gone through the playlist and are now here, so let's get on with it.
She rode a red motorbike, not a friendly Honda red, a deep bloody red, rich and dark and hateful. The bike was apparently in every other respect ordinary except for the sword resting in its scabbard, set onto the side of the bike. Her helmet was crimson, and her leather jacket was the color of old wine. In ruby studs on the back were picked out the words, Hell's Angels. It was 1:10 in the afternoon, and it was dark and humid and wet. The motorway was almost deserted, and the woman in red roared down the road on her red motorbike, smiling lazily. It had been a good day so far. There was something about the sight of a beautiful woman on a powerful motorbike with a sword stuck on the back that had a powerful effect on a certain type of man. So far, 4 traveling salesmen had tried to race her, and bits of Fort Sierra now decorated the crash barriers and bridge supports along 40 miles of motorway. She pulled up at a service area and went into the Happy Porker Cafe. It was almost empty. A bored waitress was darning a sock behind the counter, and a knot of black-leathered bikers, hard, hairy, filthy, and huge, were clustered around an even taller individual in a black coat. He was resolutely playing something that, in bygone years, would have been a fruit machine, but now had a video screen and advertised itself as Trivia Scrabble. The audience were saying things like, "It's D, press D. The Godfather must have got more Oscars than Gone with the Wind. Puppet on a string. Sandy Shaw, honest, I'm bleeding positive. 1666. No, you great pillock. That was the fire. The plague was 1665. It's B. The Great Wall of China wasn't one of the 7 wonders of the world. There were 4 options. Pop, music, sports, current events, and general knowledge. The tall biker, who had kept his helmet on, was pressing the buttons to all intents and purposes, oblivious of his supporters. At any rate, he was consistently winning. The Red Rider went over to the counter. "A cup of tea, please, and a cheese sandwich," she said. "On your own then, dear?" asked the waitress, passing the tea and something white and dry and hard across the counter. "Waiting for friends." "Ah," she said, biting through some wool. "Well, you're better off waiting in here. It's hell out there." "No," she told her. "Not yet." She picked a window table with a good view of the parking lot, and she waited. She could hear the trivia scrabblers in the background. "That's a new one. How many times has England been officially at war with France since 1066? 20? Nah, it's never 20. Oh, it was. Well, I never. American war with Mexico, I know that. It's June 1845. D, C, I told you." The second shortest biker, Pigbog, 6'3", whispered to the shortest, Greaser, 6'2". What happened to sport, then? He had love tattooed on one set of knuckles, hate on the other. "It's random, was it? Selection in it? I mean, they do it with microchips. It's probably got like millions of different subjects in there. In its RAM, he had fish across his right-hand knuckles and chip on the left. Pop music, current events, general knowledge and war. It's just, I've never seen war before. That's why I mentioned it." Pigbog cracked his knuckles loudly and pulled the ring tab of a can of beer. He swigged back half a can, belched carelessly, then sighed. "I just wish they'd do more bleeding Bible questions." "Why?" Greaser had never thought of Pigbog as a Bible trivia freak. "'Cause, well, you remember that bit of bother in Brighton?" "Oh, yeah. You was on Crime Watch," said Greaser with a trace of envy. "Well, I had to hang out in that hotel where me mum worked, didn't I? 3 months and nothing to read. Only this bugger Gideon had left his Bible behind. It kind of sticks in your mind." Another motorbike, jet black and gleaming, drew up in the car park outside. The door to the cafe opened. A blast of cold wind blew through the room. A man dressed in all black leather, with a short black beard, walked over to the table, sat next to the woman in red, and the bikers around the video Scrabble machine suddenly noticed how hungry they all were, and deputed Scuzz to go and get them something to eat. All of them except the player who said nothing, just pressed the buttons for the right answers and let his winnings accumulate in the tray at the bottom of the machine. "I haven't seen you since Mave King," said Red. "How's it been going?" "I've been keeping pretty busy," said Black. "Spent a lot of time in America, brief world tours, killing time, really." "What do you mean you've got no steak and kidney pies?" asked Scuzz, affronted. "I thought we had some, but we don't," said the woman. "Feels funny all of us getting together like this," said Red. "Funny?" "Well, you know, when you've spent all these thousands of years waiting for the big day and it finally comes. Like waiting for Christmas or birthdays." "We don't have birthdays." "I didn't say we do. I just said that was what it was like." "Actually," admitted the woman, "it doesn't look like we've got anything left at all except that slice of pizza." "Has it got anchovies on it?" asked Scuzz gloomily. None of the chapter liked anchovies or olives. "Yes, dear, it's anchovy and olives. Would you like it?" Scuzz shook his head sadly. Stomach rumbling, he made his way back to the game. Big Ted got irritable when he got hungry, and when Big Ted got irritable, everyone got a slice. A new category had come up on the video screen. You could now answer questions about pop music, current events, famine, or war. The bikers seemed marginally less informed about the Irish potato famine of 1846, the English everything famine of 1315, and the 1969 dope famine in San Francisco than they had been about war. But the player was still racking up a perfect score, punctuated occasionally by a whir, ratchet, and a chink as the machine disgorged pound coins into its tray. "Weather looks a bit tricky down south," said Red. Black squinted at the darkening clouds. "No, looks fine to me. We'll have a thunderstorm along any minute." Red looked at her nails. "That's good. It wouldn't be the same if we didn't have a good thunderstorm. Any idea how far we've got to ride?" Black shrugged. "A few 100 miles. I thought it'd be longer somehow. All that waiting just for a few 100 miles." "It's not the traveling," said Black. "It's the arriving that matters." There was a roar outside. It was the roar of a motorbike with a defective exhaust, untuned engine, leaky carburetor. You didn't have to see the bike to imagine the clouds of black smoke it traveled in, the oil slicks it left in its wake, the trail of small motorbike parts and fittings that littered the roads behind it. Black went up to the counter. "4 teas, please," he said. "1 black." The cafe door opened. A young man in dusty white leathers entered, and the wind blew empty crisp packets and newspapers and ice cream wrappers in with him. They danced around his feet like excited children, then fell exhausted to the floor. "4 of you are there, dear?" asked the woman. She was trying to find some clean cups and teaspoons. The entire rack seemed suddenly to have been coated in a light film of motor oil and dried egg. "There will be," said the man in black, and he took the teas and went back to the table where his 2 comrades waited. "Any sign of him?" said the boy in white. They shook their heads. An argument had broken out around the video screen. Current categories showing on the screen were war, famine, pollution, and pop trivia, 1962 to 1979. "Elvis Presley, it's got to be C. It was 1977 he snuffed it, wasn't it?" "Nah, D. 1976, I'm positive." "Yeah, same year as Bing Crosby." "And Mark Bolan, he was dead good. Press D, then. Go on." The tall figure made no motion to press any of the buttons. "What's the matter with you?" asked Big Ted irritably. "Go on, press D. Elvis Presley died in 1976. "I don't care what it says," said the tall biker in the helmet. "I never laid a finger on him." The 3 people at the table turned as one. Red spoke. "When did you get here?" she asked. The tall man walked over to the table leaving the astonished bikers and his winnings behind him. "I never went away," he said, and his voice was a dark echo from the night places, a cold slab of sound, gray and dead. If that voice was a stone, it would have words chiseled on a long time ago, a name and 2 dates. "Your tea's getting cold, Lord," said Famine. "It's been a long time," said War. There was a flash of lightning, and almost immediately followed by a low rumble of thunder. "Lovely weather for it," said Pollution. "Yes." The bikers around the game were getting progressively baffled by this exchange. Led by Big Ted, they shambled over to the table and stared at the 4 strangers. It did not escape their notice that all 4 strangers had Hell's Angels on their jackets, and they looked dead dodgy as far as the angels were concerned. Too clean for a start, and none of the 4 of them looked like they'd ever broken anyone's arm just because it was Sunday afternoon and there wasn't anything good on the telly. And one was a woman, too, only not riding around on the back of someone's bike, but actually allowed one of her own, like she had any right to it. "You're Hell's Angels, then?" asked Big Ted sarcastically. "If there's one thing real Hell's Angels can't abide, it's weekend bikers." Asterisks. There are a number of other things that real Hell's Angels can't abide. These include police, soap, 4 Cortinas, and in Big Ted's case, anchovies and olives. And asterisks. The 4 strangers nodded. "What chapter are you from, then?" The tall stranger looked at Big Ted and then stood up. It was a complicated motion. If the shores of the seas of night had deck chairs, they'd open something like that. He seemed to be unfolding himself forever. He wore a dark helmet, completely hiding his features, and it was made of that weird plastic, Big Ted noted. Like, you looked in it, and all you could see was your own face. "Revelations," he said, "Chapter 6. Verses 2 to 8, added the boy in white helpfully. Big Ted glared at the 4 of them. His lower jaw began to protrude, and a little blue vein in his temple started to throb. "What's that mean, then?" he demanded. There was a tug at his sleeve. It was Pigbog. He had gone a particular shade of gray under the dirt. "It means we're in trouble," said Pigbog. And then the tall stranger reached up a pale motorbike gauntlet and raised the visor of his helmet, and Big Ted found himself wishing for the first time in his existence that he had lived a better life. "Jesus Christ!" he moaned. "I think he may be along in a minute," said Pigbog urgently. "He's probably looking for somewhere to park his bike. Let's go and join a youth club or something." But Big Ted's invincible ignorance was his shield and armor. He didn't move. "Caw," he said. "Hell's Angels." War flipped him a lazy salute. "That's us, Big Ted," she said. "The real McCoy." Famine nodded. "The old firm," he said. Pollution removed his helmet and shook out his long white hair. He had taken over when Pestilence, muttering about penicillin, had retired in 1936. If only the old boy had known what opportunities the future had held. "Others promised," he said. "We deliver." Big Ted looked at the 4 horsemen. "I see you before," he said. "You was on the cover of that Blue Oyster Cult album, and I got the ring with your head on it." "I get everywhere." "Cool." Big Ted's big face screwed up with the effort of thought. "What kind of bike you riding?" he said. The storm raged around the quarry. The rope with the old car tire on it danced in the gale. Sometimes a sheet of iron, relic of an attempt at a tree house, would shake loose from its insubstantial moorings and sail away. The them huddled together, staring at Adam. He seemed bigger somehow. Dog sat and growled. He was thinking of all the smells he would lose. There were no smells in hell, apart from the sulfur, while some of them here were... Well, the fact was, there were no bitches in hell either. Adam was marching about excitedly, waving his hands in the air. There'll be no end to the fun we can have, he said. There'll be exploring and everything. I expect I can soon get the old jungles to grow again. But who'll do all the cooking and washing and such like? Quavered Brian. No one'll have to do any of that stuff, said Adam. You can have all the food you like, loads of chips, fried onion rings, anything you like, and never have to wear any new clothes, or have a bath if you don't want to, or anything, or go to school or anything, or do anything you don't want to do, ever again. It'll be wicked. The moon came up over the Cucamondy Hills. It was very bright tonight. Johnny Two Bones sat in the red basin of the desert. It was a sacred place, where the two ancestral rocks, formed in the dream time, lay as they had since the beginning. Johnny Two Bones' walkabout was coming to an end. His cheeks and chest were smeared with red ochre, and he was singing an old song, a sort of singing map of the hills, and he was drawing patterns in the dust with his spear. He had not eaten for 2 days. He had not slept. He was approaching a trance state, making him one with the bush, putting him into communion with his ancestors. He was nearly there. Nearly. He blinked, looked around wonderingly. "Excuse me, dear boy," he said to himself, out loud, in precise, enunciated tones. "But have you any idea where I am?" "Who said that?" said Johnny Two Bones. His mouth opened. "I did." Johnny scratched thoughtfully. "I take it you're one of me ancestors then, mate?" "Oh, indubitably, dear boy, quite indubitably, in a manner of speaking. Now, to get back to my original question, where am I?" "Only if you're one of my ancestors," continued Johnny Two Bones. "Why are you talking like a poofter?" "Ah, Australia," said Johnny Two Bones' mouth, pronouncing the word as though it would have to be properly disinfected before he said it again. "Oh dear. Well, thank you anyway." "Hello? Hello?" said Johnny Two Bones. He sat in the sand, and he waited, and he waited, but he didn't reply. The Aziraphale had moved on. So there you have it. This concludes our segment of the Read Along for Good Omens. I hope you had a wonderful time, and thank you for being here.